we bring together for you the best photographers in the world.
If you're a photographer that's bothered about the weather, then you should be working in a studio, not outside, because that's the one thing you cannot control ever. And I love bad weather. The worse weather, the better, I think, for photographs. There's nothing more boring than a sky without any clouds. I'd rather not shoot in that. I'd rather shoot in a whiteout where you can't see anything, because it changes the whole feel of the photography you're doing, and then you have to really think about how can you make nothing look interesting. The pull of photography came about by kind of not an accident, but a lucky meeting with Pen Hadow. Because the polar regions at that time in my life was just such a faraway place, I never imagined myself ever going there. And then Pen Hadow asked me if I'd like to photograph him preparing for his North Pole solo attempt in 2002. It was my first ever experience of the high Arctic. I just thought it would be the same kind of cold that you get here in the European Alps. It's absolutely not. Totally underprepared. I took 6 cameras with me, hoping one of them would work, and none of them worked when I arrived. I didn't realise at the time, but it was the coldest day in Resolute Bay for 43 years, I think. The GPS I had with me was quite an old one. The screen froze before it could tell me where I was, so I had got lost on the way to find them, because I was just given a GPS position over a satellite telephone. Here we are, come and find us. So I was lost. I was with another guy. He was lost as well. I had a major epic trying to find them. By sheer fluke, we found them just before the sun went down. Anyway, I put 2 cameras down this big jacket, ran around for 20 minutes using my body heat to warm the cameras back up, and there were film cameras in those days with little tiny batteries, no digital cameras at all. I couldn't afford one of those. So I came up with an idea which involved locating a stepladder and a semi-fisheye lens for the camera, so that I could make a flat piece of ice look like the top of the world by getting on top of the stepladder and pointing the camera down. It's a very simple technique. So I relied on film. I managed to shoot 13 frames before everything stopped working again, by which time everyone was deeply cold, so we had to head back. On polar expeditions, it's not the cold that kills the equipment. Cameras don't mind, electronics don't mind, even lenses don't mind getting minus 40. The autofocus won't work very well. The LCD screens on the camera, they don't really operate below minus 25. But it's a condensation that will kill a camera or a lens. So with it, once temperature gets below minus 25, when it starts creeping towards minus 40, minus 50, and there's no wind, if there's no wind and you breathe out, you have a little cloud of steam right in front of you. So you have to either hold your breath or step to the side and shoot past the little bit of fog that's hanging in the air. Otherwise that fog sticks to the front of your lens, and then you have to scratch it off just like a car windscreen in November. Because you've only got this bit of skin exposed, that's pumping that moisture onto the back of your camera when it's close to your face. The viewfinder gets covered in ice, so you can't see through the viewfinder. The LCD screen on the back, that gets covered in ice, you can't really see what's going on there either. So all my cameras, I have two camera bodies. I have a Nikon D3X and a Nikon D4 now. I've got a 17 to 55 zoom, I think, 2.8, that lives on the camera most of the time. If that isn't on the camera, I'll have a 24mm lens on there, because you can do anything with that. You can do a portrait, you can do a landscape. If you're close enough to the action, you can get a really good action shot. So when I'm on expedition, it is a job, it's not a holiday. You look at the pictures and people just assume it's some sort of low temperature camping holiday, but it's not. If you sweat, it gets in your clothes, and then your clothes become icy. And on one particular expedition, I had a jacket that was made for me. The fabric on the inside was designed to move moisture away from my body. It's called wicking. It had actually been sewn in the wrong way. So all the moisture my body was pumping out was coming straight back to me and not going anywhere. So all my clothes I was wearing ended up frozen at the end of the day. So one of the most beautiful things that's really helps the photography up that far north is the sun is very low. All the texture on the surface of the snow, it's all there all day, every day. You've heard the phrase the golden hour. Well, the golden hour on the Arctic Ocean lasts all day. Obviously when you're in a tent in a remote location you can't charge anything, and obviously you have to carry everything yourself. So I don't carry anything to back up the data, so I just have to rely on flashcards as a way of storing the data. So I'll take with me as many flashcards as I think I might need for the expedition. You take a picture and it appears on the screen for half a second and then it's gone and you don't look at it again because all that just uses up precious battery power. I don't review the pictures at the end of the day because that uses batteries. Also you're too tired, you want to eat and go to sleep and that's it. So I take the picture and then mentally you sort of log it in your head, you don't review it, you just think, right, next one. So obviously the kind of photography I do isn't always about crashing through ice and jumping off pressure ridges. There's also one of my favourite, possibly my most favourite part of the photography I do is photographing Indigenous people or local people. And one of my favourite pictures I'll probably will ever take was taken in a village in Padam. I've been living with the people for 5 or 6 days and I got invited into their house to photograph something called a puja ceremony. They spend 4 or 5 hours chanting this prayer and I was just sat in the room not taking any pictures nearly for the whole time, partly because I didn't want to interrupt their lovely stillness and chanting, and also partly because I'd shot far too much at the very start of the expedition, and for most of the expedition I only had a film budget of, I think it was 4 or 6 frames a day, so I had to really think before I took the pictures. The word got about there was some bloke in the village with a magic camera, so the lady in the picture asked me, would you come back to my house and take a family portrait of me and my newborn? So I said yes, of course. And the picture turned out a lot better than I imagined it would do, and of course I didn't see it till I got back. One thing I've discovered, for me as a photographer on an expedition, there's always something to photograph. And that's what drives me on these expeditions, that's what drives me as a photographer. And you can apply this to everything in life. If your heart isn't in it, you can't do it well. And luckily for me, my heart is in expeditions and it's definitely in photography, so that makes life a bit easier, because if I didn't enjoy doing it, I'd never be able to do it properly. So I'm very lucky to be the director of photography on this magazine, Sidetracked. It's an adventure travel journal that comes out 3 or 4 times a year. And the great thing for me is I get to look at the way other people document their journeys, which is incredibly enriching, because amazing, beautiful photographs out there that hopefully end up in here. I had this camera made specifically for me. There's no lubricants in it, no oils at all. It's not only the most beautiful camera ever made, it also works when it's very cold. It works when I don't want to work, which is never.
Be inspired, be better, be great.